We'll do it again one day, but we haven't done it in a while. It was a long time ago. We did a church cruise. A whole bunch of us from the church got together, took a cruise together. It was a lot of fun. When the boat anchored at Cozumel, Cozumel's a small island just off of Mexico, we rented Jeeps, and we rented cars, and we rented scooters. Bonnie and I each had scooters. We went all the way to the far side of the island. That's where all the secluded beaches are, and the waves are prettier there, and get away from the crowd. We had this big, huge beach all to ourselves. Way up sand, we left our shoes and our backpacks and stuff laying there, and we went down to the water's edge, and we were enjoying the water. We were enjoying the waves. Everything was manageable. Everything was calm. It was just going perfect when all of a sudden a rogue wave came upon us. Bonnie had her back to it. It just mowed her right over. And I tried to step and lean into it, and I couldn't handle it either. It knocked me right to my knees, and all of us were knocked off our feet. And then that wave went way up beach and grabbed all of our gear and started pulling it. I mean, shoes and cameras and purses were floating out to the ocean, and we're all screaming and yelling, trying to grab stuff. And as I was running up, I happened to look down just at the right time to see my rental car keys going by, and I fell on them and rescued those. And it was just, you could not stand in the power of that wave. There's a wave about to hit us today. There's a moment in the story with Jesus saying just two words, and it just mows a whole group of people down. They fall right to their knees in front of him. Now, what's going on? We are in John chapter 18. For anyone who's new here, for all of you who are new here today, I see you. Here's what you need to know. We started this journey through the Gospel of John a year ago in January. We said, you know what? We're going to give 16 months to studying and looking at the life of Jesus, and we started this journey. We're all the way up to John 18. It only goes to John 21. This whole series ends at the end of April, just 3 months away. So we're coming into the end. And John gives really detailed information to the last days of Jesus' life. And it's important for you and I to walk through this passage. John 18 is just before the cross. Before Jesus goes to the cross, John will show us the brokenness of humanity. Judas will betray Jesus, and he was one of Jesus' own disciples. The Pharisees, the teachers of Israel, they snubbed Jesus completely. The high priest in chapter 18 will reject Jesus being the Messiah. He's the high priest of Israel, and he didn't see it. There will be a moment of violence in today's story. Peter will take out a sword. Peter will go on to deny even knowing Jesus 3 times before the rooster crows. Pilate, who's responsible for justice in that society, will pervert justice and turn an innocent man over to a mob to be killed. Pilate himself will say, I find no fault in this man, but you can have him. He will not uphold his commitment to giving a person justice. And then in the end, Jesus will stand before a crowd, and the crowd will be given a choice. Do you want Jesus, the Son of God? Or do you want Barabbas, the criminal? And the crowd will cry out and say, give us Barabbas. It's a dark chapter that's really important for you and I to walk through, because it identifies the brokenness that we all carry, that I carry. And if Jesus doesn't die for me on a cross, then one day I got to face my own punishment. But because of him, I don't have to be judged. Because of him, judgment passes over me. It's beautiful. And so it's important that you and I walk through this. All this brokenness and all this darkness is really unthinkable, because Jesus came loving them. He came befriending them. He came healing them, feeding them, restoring them, resurrecting them. He proved himself in every way. And in the end, they'll say, give us Barabbas. It's just unthinkable. Today, though, is John's portion of the betrayal of Judas. It's huge with imagery from the Old Testament. It's got this moment of a wow factor in it. It has the power of Jesus in it. It's a really good chapter for us, so buckle up. Here we go. John chapter 18, starting with verse 1. When Jesus had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples, crossed the Kidron Valley, and on the other side there was a garden. We know that's the Garden of Gethsemane, by the way. And he and his disciples went into, okay, now just for a moment as you're looking at that passage, look at the word Kidron Valley. Kidron Valley is very, very important in history. At this time, here's something that I found unique. Barclay commentaries, and I don't always agree with him, but this was fascinating. Barclay says that this is during Passover. Hundreds of thousands of lambs are being sacrificed right now for people's sins. In that corner of the Temple Mount, there were these channels. And so all that blood that was being spilled ran down those channels, ran down a slope into, which was right below the temple, the Kidron Valley. Jesus just might be walking right next to a creek that's stained with lamb's blood. He might just be stepping over that creek, which is just huge of symbolism, because he's going to be the sacrificial lamb who sheds his blood in a few moments. But there's something else that's going on here which has a great wire all the way back to the Old Testament. Jesus is betrayed in the Kidron Valley. Go all the way back in the Old Testament. You can read this story in 2 Samuel 15. David, who's king at that time, David is betrayed by a very, very close friend. And it causes him deep anguish, and it causes him deep sorrow, and he's just broken from it. And when it all comes out that he was betrayed by this guy goes out and he hangs himself. Where did all of that happen in David's life? The Kidron Valley. Now we're all the way up to Jesus' day, and Jesus will be betrayed. It will cause anguish. He'll have tears over it. And when it's all done, Judas will end up hanging himself. He'll take his own life also. Do you see why God constantly is connecting us to the Old Testament? He was the God of the Old Testament. Guess who Jesus is? These wires are important for you and I to have in our lives, and this is an amazing moment. A king in the Old Testament was betrayed here in the Kidron Valley. King Jesus will be betrayed here in the Kidron Valley. Oh gosh, that's just the first verse. Let's move on. Verse 2. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. When people are looking for you, where do they look? Maybe a favorite coffee shop, maybe a favorite diner, maybe a friend's house. When they can't find you, where do they go looking for you? Here at the church, when the staff go to my office and they don't find me in the office, they know immediately to go across the hall into the sanctuary. They almost always find me there. Always. I'm in the sanctuary all through the day. I walk in there. I pace in there when I'm worried about something. I pray in there. I work through troubled passages. When I hit a point in a sermon that I'm having a hard time breaking through, I'll just go and walk and think about it, talk to myself, and all of a sudden a light goes on and I come running back to my community. They always know if Ron's not in his office, go to the sanctuary. Same thing is true in Jesus' day. If you're looking for Jesus and you're having trouble finding him, guess where you go? He always goes to the garden and prays at night. If he's in Jerusalem, that's where he'll be praying. And Judas knew that. So Judas is leading the group. Verse 3. So Judas came to the garden guiding a detachment of soldiers. And there were also some officials from the chief priests. There the Pharisees were there. They were carrying torches and lanterns and weapons. They were told in other books that the weapons were clubs, that the weapons were spears, that the weapons were swords. They're coming to arrest the group. How big is the group? Some say, oh, it was really big. Others say it was not that big. I think it's sizable because there has to be enough of these soldiers and stuff in place to arrest Jesus and to manhandle his followers. What happens if they rise up? It's not just one-on-one. It's probably not just two-on. There's probably 30 to 50 people here in this group. And then when you add the chief priest and all that, it's a sizable group coming to arrest Jesus. And Judas is out front leading them. Oh, you just knew he would love this moment, didn't you? He has already cut a deal. He's already accepted the money. He's leading them to arrest Jesus. He'll have that betrayal kiss that John doesn't tell us about for some reason, but he'll kiss Jesus so they know who to arrest. And he's a big deal right now. He's a big deal. Judas is leading the group, not knowing that he's betraying the very Son of God in all of this. Verse 4, Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. Oh my goodness. Knowing everything that was going to happen to him, that's important for you to know that, because Jesus could have avoided this moment. He could have been somewhere else. He didn't have to go to the very place where they would expected to find him. Too often, Christian people think Jesus was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He knew exactly what was happening. He placed himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then he initiates the arrest. He doesn't hang back. He doesn't let somebody else step out in front for him. He steps out in front of the whole crowd. "Who is it you're looking for?" And then they give, oh my gosh, the most earthly name you could give to Jesus. For anyone here, maybe you came with a friend and you're not sure who Jesus is. Here's he's just a man. That's the name they give. He's just Jesus of Nazareth. He's just a man. They ask for the man. What comes next? Get ready for the next two words. In verse 6, "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas, the traitor, was standing there with them. And when Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and they fell to the ground. All right. What knocked them to the ground? Catch this. The word "he" isn't in the original text. Take that out for a moment. Some of you have been in church long enough that you know what Jesus just said. When they said, "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth," Jesus just says two words: "I am." That goes all the way back to the life of Moses, when Moses is up on the mountain and he's in the presence of God. There's that burning bush thing happening. And God's saying, "I want you to go back to Egypt. I'm going to free my people," and all that. And Moses asks a question, "When they ask me, who sent me? Who do I say?" And God says, "You tell them, I am sent you." I am is the name for God. Most of Israel was afraid to even say those words. Most of them wouldn't even utter the words "I am." And here is Jesus, and anyone who says Jesus never claimed to be God, you just missed it. It just went past you. We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, and Jesus says, "I am," and it's like a wave that just mows them down. Jesus is standing, they're all on their knees. Verse 7, again, Jesus asked them, "Who is it you want?" And again, they give the earthly answer, "Jesus of Nazareth." And Jesus answered, "I told you, I am. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." Jesus asked them twice, "Who are you looking for?" so that it was clear. You're not here to arrest them. They're not here to die for mankind today, just me. I'm here to die for mankind. You got to let them go. That's why Jesus is protecting them. It says it fulfills Scripture. And then all mayhem breaks out. They try to take hold of Jesus. And in this arrest, suddenly there's a sword. Here we go, verse 10. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, and he struck the high priest servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. And Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Oh my gosh. My imagination just takes off so fast in this crazy thing. Why does Peter have a sword? He's a fisherman with a sword. That's not going to be good. He should have a net in his hand, but he has a sword, and then he pulls it out, and he swings wildly. He's probably trying to hit the guy in the head, but misses his head. Maybe there's a flinch. The ear comes off. I mean, he totally Mike Tyson's this guy. And then in the middle of that, here's poor Malchus in the middle of all this mayhem, and his ear's off. If that were you, that would irritate you, and but good news, it's not irreversible. Thank you. It is just so. Do you realize that in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the three Gospels before this, when they tell this story, they don't tell you who pulled out the sword. They give him a lot of grace. They just say one of the disciples pulled out a sword. John doesn't hesitate. It was Peter. And just tells you who it was. And then John's the only one who gives us the name. Luke's the only one who tells us Jesus heals the ear. John's the only one who gives you the name. Why? Why does he give us the name? Because when John wrote, Malchus was probably still alive. It's as if John's saying, if you think I'm lying, you can go ask him. His name is Malchus. He's the high priest's servant. You can go ask him if this So this is a legit story. And Malchus, oh my goodness, the emotional roller coaster that poor guy was on that day. First, come on, we're gonna go arrest a blasphemer. And man, that would anger, a servant to the high priest. A blasphemer, let's go get him. And so his anger's high. And then he gets there, and that's the dude, but he says the words, I am, and he's knocked off his feet. And he's thinking, what is going on? And then, okay, let's take hold of him. And then suddenly he feels the cut of a blade on the side of his head, and his ear is just off. And in the moment of that pain, suddenly he looks up, and there's Jesus, the one he's there to arrest. And Jesus touches the side of his head, and the next emotion is the happiness of knowing your ear's healed, but the confusion of who is this guy? And in that moment, do you stay an enemy of Jesus, or do you convert? We don't know what he does. And then Jesus heals it. How did he heal it? Did Jesus pick up the ear and put it back on the side of Malchus's head, and then it was healed? Or did Jesus just touch the wound and grow a brand new ear? And now, all of a sudden, there's Malchus with 3 ears. He's got one on each side of his head and one on the ground. And, well, be careful what you say around Malchus. He's all ears, My imagination, I apologize. I've heard whole sermons on Malchus and that ear, and it's not the point of the story. The whole point, all of the spotlights go back to just 2 words: I am. Do you understand the significance of Jesus saying I am, and they were knocked off their feet? Do you understand that? Do you know that everyone in the Old Testament who found themselves in the presence of God fell to their feet? Do you know that happened? Sometimes we think, oh, one day when I get to heaven and I see Jesus, I got some questions he needs to answer for me. I'm going to stand there nose to nose with Jesus. I'm demanding my questions be answered. Is that really how you think that's going to go down? Because when Moses finds himself in the presence of God, he falls off his feet right to his face. King David, when he finds himself in the presence of God, just collapses. The prophet Isaiah, when he realizes God's glory is in front of him, he falls to his face. When Ezekiel suddenly realizes that he's in the presence of God, he falls and he says, just go away from me. I'm just a sinner. Go away. I'm a man of unclean lips. Don't even look at me. Why? Because the holiness of God, and when you're in the presence of the holiness of God, all of a sudden you're aware, I don't deserve heaven. I don't deserve eternal life. I don't deserve grace. I don't deserve forgiveness. And you just collapse. And what happens next is pretty powerful, because Jesus will then touch you. He'll stand you back up. He'll hug you and tell you, well done, good and faithful servant. But in that first moment when you stand in the glory of his presence, you'll get knocked right off your feet. It's what happens to John, by the way, in Revelation 1. John says, when I saw Jesus, I fell at his feet as though dead. And then he placed a right hand on me and he said, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I'm alive forever and ever. You and I have never known that much power. Jesus wasn't arrested by some military might. He's the power in this story. He's the great I am. So the question today is just simple. Who is he going to be to you? Is he just going to be a guy? He's a man, Jesus of Nazareth. That's all he is. Or are you willing to let him into your life and allow him to be the great I am for you? Because every need you have, he answers with his name. Lord, do you know how much sorrow I'm in right now? He answers with his name. I am. Lord, are you with me right now in this moment of pain and confusion and frustration? Are you here? And he answers with his name. I am. Lord, one day, do you really have a place for me in heaven? Are you really saving me from my sins? And he answers with his name, I am. Lord, are you really coming back for me one day soon? Jesus says, I am. Lord, right now, in this moment of fear and discouragement, the struggle that I'm in, are you close to me right now? And he answers with his name. I am. I'm really close. You don't just follow some man. You are a follower of the great I am. And he wants to be your I am today.